Welcome to the Marriage Boss Podcast, and I'm totally pumped up today because I've got a special guest. Wendy L. Williams is a relationship coach. She weaves together her personal background as a nurse, educator, speaker, and personal development coach to help individuals, couples, and communities to shift from soul draining to soul satisfying reconnections through coaching, education, and consultation. She knows that committed individuals and couples have the keys required for the bond and love we all really want, but they can give up before they hit their stride. She believes that when people put the kind of dedication to being a great partner as they do in other important areas like career or parenting, their marriage bonds and connection will rock. Married for almost 20 years. She also has the great privilege of being a stepmom to her husband's two young adult sons, now in their 20s. And welcome, Wendy, to the Marriage Boss Podcast.
Thank you, boss. I'm so excited to be here, Rick Gabrielly. Very excited. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And, we first connected. What happened?
I think I invited myself, but that's okay.
Yeah, you did invite yourself, but that's okay. Because we connected first when you had me on Mighty Married Moms, which was so much fun. And then and the follow-up podcast, which I liked even more, which you girls crushed it. So, you reached out to me and you wanted to talk about this subject, not your mama's marriage.
Mama's marriage.
And
that's right.
We're going to investigate today how the 21st century marriage is slightly different from our story. And so why don't you tell us how you got started in the business first, and then what made you, reach out to me with this topic?
Oh my goodness, this story's a killer. I gotta tell you, I got married later in life. I got married about 10 days before I turned 38 years old, which is, a few years ago now. We won't talk about exactly how many years ago I was 38. But nonetheless, no, I already told you I was married for 20 years. So Anyway, so I got married a few days before I turned 38 years old, and that was in a June. I was a June bride, and by August, I was pulling my hair out because I loved this guy. I respected this guy. I waited 20. I was old. It wasn't like I didn't know what I knew. I knew he was a quality human being and a quality man, but it was driving me crazy. And I'll tell you what happened. I came home. I was a registered nurse. I worked a 10-hour shift in Boston taking care of cancer and AIDS patients. I had gone to the grocery store to pick up a really nice piece of swordfish for a nice meal. I gotten some dry cleaning. So I had dry cleaning on my right shoulder, a bag of groceries on my left shoulder, and I went upstairs to our second floor apartment. And there was the love of my life. He was sitting on the couch playing the banjo. And I was like, really? I didn't get married for this. I'm not your geisha girl. I'm not, this is just not going to happen. Look at all the dishes in the sink. Look at the laundry that needs to be folded. I'm the only one around here. Yeah. So I was so frustrated. And I also knew that he wasn't a lazy person. He loved me wildly. I loved him. So there was something going on. So I said, I got to read some more books. I got to figure this all out. And one of the things I learned was that men actually do react differently at the end of a workday than women do. And also that marriages go through stages. There were so many things that I learned. And I was like, is anybody talking about this? I didn't get this. I had extensive premarital counseling. I had done reading before that, but I hadn't heard a lot of this stuff. And a lot of my friends were operating under the same misconception. So I just said, I got to do this. And it has been a constant learning process for the last 20 years. Wow. And the last 3 or 4 years of my life, I've devoted to becoming a coach.
It sounds like you were at the cutting edge of this kind of thinking 20 years ago, for sure. And I'm glad you did it, because I know you've already helped thousands of people and reached millions with this message. And I can relate, because when I get home from work, even if I'm working from home that day, I could be tired at any point in the day, and I could just crash. So I think that one of the things that stood out was that you said men and women operate at like different cycles and different stages. Not only does a relationship have a different stage, but maybe we as not only genders, but also individuals, we may have different cycles. I know I'm up. My best working time is like from 3 a.m. to 9 a.m. most people are sleeping in that area, and I could be sleeping when they're working.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, and so I'm sure that you and your family have had to make some adjustments along the way.
Yeah.
But what seems to happen when these, like you said, different cycles for men and women, and this plays into a little bit about the differences between the 20th century and the 21st century. So what's happened now is that women are in the workforce much more than our mamas were. Our mamas were mostly home, typically, generationally.
Yeah.
I'm going to be talking in broad strokes here, so everybody listening, please, your individual family constellation and what's going on for you is maybe different from this. But in general, the moms of the 50s and early 60s and certainly the 40s were more home than not home.
Yep.
And they were hanging out with other women more than not hanging out with other women. And what's happened directly as a result of the women's movement is that women are in a different place economically, a different place socially, and they're out there in the workplace. And that is just so different. They've done studies that show there's a stress hormone, and it's called cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
And cortisol levels during the workday, we all are stressed. Men, women, everybody is stressed a little bit in the workplace. Women's stress levels are twice that of men.
Oh my God.
Hour to day in the workplace. So they're already climbing the walls a little bit more than men are, and men have cortisol too. Then you go home at the end of the day. Women open the door at the end of the day, and they open the door to their home, and they go, oh, here I am, second shift.
Wow.
And again, broad strokes, typically open the door, and they go, oh, phew, done with that, putting that out of my head, putting that down. And they don't necessarily see all the day-to-day things. Again, broad strokes. Don't take it personally. Women's stress levels, again, tested against men's in the home after work. Women are 4 times higher than men.
Wow.
Women are walking around with a giant stress ball all the time. So if you're already stressed and you see the love of your life or your partner in life, a very capable, physically able human being, sitting down, watching TV, or going down to the garage and tinkering, or doing something to kind of transition from the day. If you're like me, and like what I was going through when I was in my early marriage, you go through the roof and you're like, oh my gosh. And that's really a number one complaint of women is, I want a partner.
Wow.
I want a partner. And
Well,
it's just so different.
It's funny.
Levels come down, and what men need to come down off the day are different things. Very different things. And what that happens to do, all those specific issues between men and women's bodies and how they work become very personal. It becomes about Wendy and Jeff rather than, hey, listen, this is how I process stress. This is how you process stress. Let's figure this out. No, it's become very personal. And then you take that personal stuff and the resentments build and build and build. People begin to disconnect. They begin to separate, and divorce seems very likely. It's really snowballed in the last 50 years.
Wow. So what do you think we can do? Because I think this is also a cultural phenomenon. I had a guy here yesterday who was from Guatemala, same age as me, and he asked me what I do, and I told him, about the marriage boss, and he was telling me he said, so when young people get married today, what they should do is the man should take some money and start putting it aside and hiding it from the woman, because if he gets married, he doesn't want her to know that he has that money over there. And I said, well, this is a direct, experiential story. I said, we don't do that over here. That's like that would be the kiss of death of a new relationship. So there's a cultural phenomenon here. And so how should we approach this if there are young people listening today, or married people who are struggling, or even if you're not married, if you're in a committed relationship, how should we begin to deal with even going there?
Right. Well, it's not going to be any big news breaker, but it's communication, and it's really talking this through and figuring this out. And I think that if men and women each knew how each person processes stress and what makes each person feel better during the day or overall, and we knew that it was very, very different, like for instance, a guy will, typically men want to say about problems, they just say, I don't want the problem. Let's either kill it or forget about it because it's too big for me. And, it's like a hierarchical thing. Either I can deal with it and take care of it and kill it and put it behind me, or I can't. And so I'm not even going to bother fighting. Whereas a woman, the processing of it, looking at it from different angles and thinking about it and talking about it and processing it is the way that the stress level goes down for her. So to assume that a man wants to talk about it is a wrong assumption.
Okay.
Generally speaking, it's a wrong assumption. So if you were saying you saw your man come in and he looks upset, he looks distressed or whatever, oh honey, let's go sit out on the back deck and have a glass of wine and talk about it. Probably the last thing in the world he wants to do. Okay. He just wants to forget about it or kill it, right? But it's very, very different. So that's one thing I would say is that women and men both need to know how the other one operates. And
so then really should we think like the other person?
Well, you should take into account how the other person deals with life. Do you have to change how you think? Not necessarily.
Well, but I guess what I'm saying is, if I know my wife is going to respond and process something this way, if I want to be aligned with her, yeah. I should begin to think, what is she thinking? How is she feeling? And go there.
Right.
And then go sit on the back porch with her with a glass of wine and let her talk.
Well, if she has the issue, if she's got the problem,
yeah,
that's great.
And if the man has the issue and the man has a problem, then the ladies out there need to think about what would he like and what is he thinking, and then go do that and think and act like that for a minute or two. So we have to really know what the other person is thinking and feeling. Yep. And there are some gender rules here, and there are some individual rules. So no. I like to use the analogy of, if I'm hunting elephants, I have to bring an elephant gun with me.
Yes.
I can't bring a giraffe gun. So
right.
If you're at the watering hole, you got zebras and giraffes. Figure out which one you are, and then be that, and then so it's important to know, if you're going to be in a successful relationship, what the other person's thinking and feeling, mm-hmm. and then go and align yourself with that.
And I like to think of it as how we process stress, how we do like a stressful end of the day sort of a thing, and how we process stress is very, very differently. And women do, like the woman's brain is geared to processing things verbally. And just going through different scenarios. And what typically happens when a man wants to love a woman and and there's a problem, men are problem solvers. They want to take care of it, and there's studies that show that men's general happiness is greatly increased when their woman has a smile on her face.
Wow.
And if a woman doesn't have a smile on her face, he wants to make sure that happens. But if he tries and tries and tries in different ways and it doesn't work, he retreats and gets like, okay, I got it. I'm not going to be successful here, so I'm not even going to try, right? So that adds to the relationship being degraded.
Wow.
Right? So if a woman says, "Oh my gosh, my boss, what a jerk! This happened today. I can't even believe it." Typically, a man might say, well, just don't answer his emails till the end of the day, or interrupt him at the office if he doesn't listen to your whatever. He might offer a solution, and what really works best is to say, "Wow, really? Tell me more. Wow, that must have been hard. Wow, how else would you handle it the next time?" Don't offer a solution, and there's about 15 minutes that is all you really need to do, to just sit there and just go, really? Wow, that must have been hard.
Yeah.
Wow, tell me more, and not offer a solution. And then her brain, and if you're looking her in the eye, she's going to think you're the best thing since sliced bread.
Wow. And we have a little, this is like relationship gold, and in my relationship, Carol and I have come to the conclusion that if I say either "that's great, honey" or "that's terrible, honey," those two phrases, they're like magic. As a matter of fact, we after 30 years, we even have a shortcut now. If she is in a crisis mode,
Yep.
and she starts to tell me either something amazing happened or something terrible or whatever, and she needs a "that's great" or "that's terrible, honey," I can
Yep.
shortcut the whole thing by just saying "that's great, honey" or "that's terrible, honey," and it triggers something in her mind that
Sure.
I'm about to listen to her for the next however many minutes, and it just diffuses everything. It just
Yep.
melts down all the nonsense.
Naturally. You came about that naturally. That's awesome.
Yeah, and so it's just a little shortcut, and she has one
Yep.
too. She says,
Yeah.
"You're amazing,"
Yes.
and so if I'm about to tell her a 1 hour story or tell her my next great idea for saving the face of love and relationships on the planet, all she
There you
has to
go.
do is say, "You're amazing," and then
Yep.
I know she's behind me 100%.
That's
And
exactly right.
so-
That's exactly right.
It's pretty funny,
Men
but
really thrive with being acknowledged and told that they're more than capable.
yeah,
And I'm going to speak for myself. This is just Wendy Williams talking to you here. I grew up in the age of, if you recognize this, and if any of your listeners and viewers recognize this. Women need a man like a fish needs a bicycle. That's the way that I was raised up as a young woman in my late teens and 20s and 50s. Women need a man like a fish needs a bicycle. That's a lot of cultural food that I need to get rid of.
yeah,
That I need to get rid of. It is wrong. It is disrespectful. It is contributing to the culture, having problems in relationships and marriages. And it's certainly not the way that I want to treat that flesh and blood across from me that happens to be a man that I love very, very much.
yeah,
Right? So for me, it's been a lot to kind of come around to. But men thrive on being told, "No, you're right. I hadn't thought of it that way. Wow, that's a really good idea.
yeah.
Thank you so much. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come along just when you did."
Well, you know what's funny? I remember.
It's unbelievable what it can do to a man going, "Okay,
Yeah.
good. I'm capable. And women in my generation, my culture, we're not used to handing out those compliments. We're more used to rolling our eyes and going, "Oh, he just doesn't get it." Terrible.
When I think on all this type of work that we both do, I really find that there are segments of the population that embrace this. Like if we were to go heavily into the women's empowerment movement right now, they might not embrace this stuff. They might say, "Listen, you know what? Enough of this already. Enough trying to figure out him and her and all that. This is who I am. Deal with it." And a lot of these people are very unhappy because they can't form successful, committed, loving relationships.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, no. I agree with you. For those who have ears to hear, you can hear it and you can get it. Another analogy that comes to mind for me is, yes, this is how women's bodies process stress. They do need to talk it through. They do need to process things, and they need some sort of nurturing connection. And that's what helps them turn down the cortisol and turn up the oxytocin, which is the feel-good hormone for women. The feel-good de-stressing hormone for men happens to be testosterone. And testosterone goes down during the course of the day when you're out there fighting the fight and beating back the tigers. Mm-hmm. And in order to come home and have your testosterone replenished, do you know what the number one way that the body replenishes testosterone for men? You know?
No.
So, okay if you don't. Inactivity. Muscles being at rest.
Wow.
That's how the body replaces testosterone. So when a man comes home at the end of the day and sits down and watches TV, he's doing something amazing for his body and his life. Because you know what low testosterone does over the course of years? Contributes to heart attack.
Wow.
So there's so many good reasons to kind of just go, oh, and just turn women and men to turn and say, oh, I get it. There's something physiologically important. You know, if you can kind of remember or look back into the National Geographics of your mind, and you see women and men in their loincloths doing different things, the women are off chattering, hanging out with the babies, talking to each other in one corner of the camp, and the men are sitting around in a circle, squatting, looking into the fire, basically kind of quietly. It's because that's the way the body works. And has society changed? Would I want women to go back in the home and not be in the workplace? No. Am I looking forward to having a woman president? Someday. I don't know if this is the one, but I'm just saying that I wouldn't want the women's movement to not have happened. There's nothing better. The pay equity, all that stuff. However, our bodies haven't made some giant shift. This is how our bodies work.
So how can...
Process stress. And so we need to acknowledge that and have conversations around that and say, okay, honey, you come home, you need to rest and sit down. I will do something different too, or whatever. We're not going to get right on the kids' homework right that minute. Find a way. Half hour's all you need. Great. And then you can come out and we can talk, or whatever it might be. You have to just negotiate it, but it's a given. It's the elephant gun. You need to know that if you want an elephant, you need to use an elephant gun. And so many women, many men are using giraffe guns all the time and getting so frustrated. And so if you work with what is, it's going to make a huge difference.
It sounds like you might be able to speak on this one particular element. A lot of my 30 to 45-year-old female friends who are not in a relationship yet and have been, really out there working hard, building careers, have come to me recently saying that not only do they feel, but they've been told by trusted sources that they are too much in their masculine and they are unable to really forge these relationships with healthy, attractive, desirable men. They're always bringing in the wrong men because their masculine energy and their drive has gone over the edge and it's too strong. How can they get back to a place where they can work together with the opposite sex to build these great relationships?
I would say the number one thing, I'm so glad you brought up that terminology of feminine energy and masculine energy, because every human being has that. We all have some masculine energy and feminine energy, for lack of a better term, which is different from our gender. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. And yes, I think that and again, those young women, 35 to 40 years old or whatever, have been raised up by women like me who said women need a man like woman needs a bicycle, or a fish needs a bicycle, right? So it makes sense that they would be kind of more in their masculine energy. And again, where the work world has kind of fostered that. So what I would say for somebody like that is to understand that they do have a body that operates differently. They do have feminine energy that needs to be assuaged. They do need to increase their oxytocin. And one great way to do that, two great ways to do that, is if they're in relationship with one of these men and they're open, is to really be very clear and direct and ask for something that's romantic. Don't assume that a guy is going to know what you think is romantic. But romance, a romantic session, a romantic evening, a romantic gesture really jacks up the oxytocin in a great way. So to be very clear, it would be great, honey, if we could go to this movie this weekend or go take a walk in this park and maybe have dinner at that restaurant. Your choice. Don't say, sure, I'd like to go out this weekend and hope that they're going to get it. Mm-hmm. Tell them what would really feel good to you. That's one thing. And the other thing is foster your relationships with your women friends. Foster your relationship with your women friends. Women in our generation in these last 20, 30, 40 years have not been spending nearly enough time with other women. That is really, really key.
Wow.
And woman to woman, not you, but women, between women, 6 magical words. Oh dear. That's hard. I understand. That's all we really need to be in relationship with one another. And oxytocin, I mean, if you're talking about a tough situation, and again, oxytocin will rise. So for those young women, acknowledge the fact that you are a woman. Find a tribe of women and make sure that you hang out with them and really be there for one another, as opposed to sitting around dogging guys. Move away from that. Not only because it's whatever, just because it just doesn't help increase the oxytocin. It's going to increase the cortisol and the stress. So don't do that. Just find ways to be with one another and enjoy one another, and realize that is really key and important. And it's something we've lost over the past 40, 50 years. And so that's what I would tell people, women in that age group.
Cool. I love that. Let's just cover one more thing before we leave each other. How can we help young couples who are just getting together, who may be thinking about marriage? What is the best thing that a young man and a young woman can do to at least get off on the right foot where this new marriage is concerned, especially when they have mamas telling them how marriage is and what they should do? They're getting their instructions from the old marriage, potentially, and we're living in a new era now.
Right. I think the best thing to tell people is to really recognize that there are forces at work that are in your relationship that are separate, apart, part of, integral to, however you want to word it, that you need to be aware of, that are part of that relationship. It isn't just one person and the other person, and how are we going to make this work given our cultural backgrounds, as you talked about, or our personalities, or our preferences, or anything like that. There's more to it than that. There's the physiology that's there. There's the fact that society, marriages are they're in trouble. Let's face facts. That's why you and I do what we do. There's more divorces than there's ever been. More divorces than there's ever been. There's a shift, and we have to recognize that this is not our mama's marriage, that we have moved. The society has moved. Back in the 50s and 60s, whatever, there used to be what we call a companionship marriage. Now, marriages are required to be high intimacy. We want not only the companionship of being a team, and you get the money, I'll manage the books, I'll get the kids, you get our parents, whatever, like a splitting, that companionship thing. Now we have a companionship, plus we want long walks on the beach, romance, we want you to be my best friend. There's more pressure on that institution of marriage than there's ever been in history. So to recognize that, and to find ways to kind of maybe take your foot off the gas a little bit and say, you're not going to be my only friend that I tell all my things to. Maybe I'm going to cultivate and develop my relationships with my girlfriends or my guy friends, to encourage one another. So if a couple was just starting out, I would say recognize that there are other forces, physical and societal, that are playing on your relation, that are part of your relationship. And the other thing that I would encourage young people to realize is in a relationship, there's you, there's me, and there's the third entity, the relationship itself. And what can I do in a given day to cultivate, nurture, and help grow the relationship? And what can you do each day to cultivate? It's different than when you say, all right, we'll go to bed at 10 rather than 11 like I like to. So there's like I give up something, and get out of that and say, what's good for the relationship? If we're both in bed by 10:30 or something like that. It's a silly example, but I'm just saying that put the relationship itself as a new third entity. It isn't just about Wendy and Jeff anymore. It's about Wendy and Jeff's marriage and what's good for that.
Good stuff.
What's to feed that.
Wow. Good stuff. Well, this has been so much fun. You are always a beacon of light and just full of knowledge about this subject and other things. So I love having you, and I'm so glad that you are in my world. And thanks today for sharing all this with us, Wendy.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and hats off to the Marriage Boss Tribe.
And let's just mention you're going to have a new website up. It's going to be at wendylwilliams.com.
That's it.
And we'll put that in the show notes. And good luck with that. And we'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care. Thanks again.
Thanks. Bye.